The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. Chapter 1. The Riverbank. The mole had been working very hard all the morning, spring cleaning his little home. First with brooms, then with dusters, then on ladders with a brush and a pail of whitewash, till he had splashes of whitewash all over his black fur, and aching back and weary arms. Spring was moving in the air above and in the earth below and around him, penetrating even his dark and lowly little house with its spirit of divine discontent and longing. It was small wonder, then, that he suddenly flung down his brush on the floor, said "bother" and "hang spring cleaning," and bolted out of the house. He scraped and scratched and scrabbled and scrooged, working busily with his little paws and muttering, up we go," until at last, pop! His snout came out into the sunlight, and he found himself rolling in the warm grass of a great meadow. "This is fine," he said to himself. "This is better than whitewashing," and he jumped on all fours at once in the joy of the living and the delight of spring without the cleaning. He thought his happiness was complete when, as he meandered aimlessly along, suddenly he stood by the edge of a full-fed river. Never in his life had he seen a river before. It was all a shake and a shiver, glints and gleams, sparkles, rustling and swirling, chattering and bubbling. The mole was bewitched. As he sat on the grass, a dark hole in the bank opposite, just above the water's edge, caught his eye. Then, as he looked, a small face appeared, a little brown face with whiskers. It was the water rat. "Hello, Mole," he said. "Would you like to come over?" The rat stepped into a little boat which the mole had not seen and sculled smartly across. "Now then, step lively," he said, holding up his forepaw as the mole stepped gingerly down, and the mole, to his surprise and rapture, found himself seated in the stern of a real boat. "Do you know," he said, "I've never been in a boat before in all my life." "What?" cried the rat, open-mouthed. "Never been in a... You never... Well, What have you been doing then?" "Is it so nice as all that?" asked the mole shyly. "Nice? It's the only thing," said the water rat solemnly. "Believe me, my friend, there is nothing half so much worth doing as messing about in boats. Look here, suppose we drop down the river together and make a day of it." The mole waggled his toes from sheer happiness. "What a day I'm having," he said. "Let's start at once." "Hold hard a minute then," said the rat, and climbed up into his hole above. He reappeared with a fat wicker lunch basket. "What's inside it?" asked the mole, wriggling with curiosity. "There's cold chicken inside it," replied the rat briefly. "Cold tongue, cold ham, cold beef, pickled gherkin, salad, French rolls, cress sandwiches, spotted meat, ginger beer, lemonade, soda water." "Oh, stop, stop!" cried the mole in ecstasy. "This is too much." "Do you really think so?" inquired the rat. "It's only what I always take on these little excursions." "All this is so new to me," said the mole. "Do you really live by the river? What a jolly life!" "By it and with it and on it and in it," said the rat. "It's brother and sister to me, and company, and food and drink. Lord, the times we've had together. Now then, here's our backwater where we're going to have lunch." It was so very beautiful that the mole could only hold up both forepaws and gasp, "Oh my, oh my, oh my." The rat helped the mole safely ashore and swung out the lunch basket. The mole begged to be allowed to unpack it all by himself, and the rat was very pleased to indulge him and to sprawl at full length on the grass and rest. When all was ready, the rat said, "Now pitch in, old fellow," and the mole was very glad to, for he had started his spring cleaning at a very early hour that morning, as people will do, and he had not paused for a bite or a drink. "What are you looking at?" said the rat presently, when the edge of their hunger was somewhat dulled. I'm looking, said the mole, at a streak of bubbles that I see travelling along the surface of the water. Bubbles? Oh-ho, said the rat in an inviting sort of way. A broad, glistening muzzle showed itself above the edge of the bank, and the otter hauled himself out and shook the water from his coat. Greedy beggars, he observed, making for the luncheon basket. Why didn't you invite me, Ratty? This was an impromptu affair, explained the rat. By the way, my friend, Mr. Mole. Proud, I'm sure, said the otter, and the two animals were friends forthwith. Such a rumpus everywhere, continued the otter. All the world seems to be out on the river today. Toad's out in his brand new boat, new togs, new everything. The two animals looked at each other and laughed. Once it was nothing but sailing, said the rat. Then he tired of that and took to punting. Last year it was houseboating. We all had to go and stay with him in his houseboat and pretend we liked it. It's all the same. Whatever he takes up, he gets tired of it and starts on something fresh. Such a good fellow too, remarked the otter, but no stability, especially in a boat. From where they sat, they could get a glimpse of the main stream, and just then a boat flashed into view. The rower, a short, stout figure, splashing badly and rolling a good deal, but working his hardest. The rat stood up and hailed him, but Toad, for it was he, shook his head and settled sternly to his work. He'll be out of that boat in a minute if he rolls like that, said the rat, sitting down again. Of course he will, chuckled the otter. Just then an errant mayfly swerved past. There was a swirl of water and a gloop, and the mayfly was visible no more. Neither was the otter. But again there was a streak of bubbles on the surface of the river. Well, well, said the rat, I suppose we ought to be moving. I wonder which of us had better pack up the luncheon basket. He did not speak, as if he was frightfully eager for the treat. Oh, please, let me, said the mole, so of course Rat let him. The afternoon sun was getting low as the rat sculled gently homewards in a dreamy mood. The mole was very full of lunch, and already quite at home in a boat, or so he thought. And presently he said, Ratty, please, I want to row. Now? The rat shook his head with a smile. Not yet, he said. Wait till you've had a few lessons. It's not quite so easy as it looks. The mole was quiet for a minute or two, but he began to feel more and more jealous of the rat, sculling so easily along, and his pride began to whisper that he could do it every bit as well. He jumped up and seized the scull so suddenly that the rat was taken by surprise and fell backwards off his seat with his legs in the air. The triumphant mole took his place, flung his sculls back with a flourish, and made a great dig at the water. He missed the surface altogether. His legs flew up above his head, and sploosh! Over went the boat. Oh my, how cold the water was, and oh, how very wet it felt. Then a firm paw gripped him by the back of his neck. It was the rat, and he was laughing. He propelled the helpless mole to shore and set him down on the bank, a squashy, pulpy lump of misery. The dismal mole, wet without and shamed within, trotted about till he was fairly dry, while the rat recovered the boat and dived for the lunch basket. As they set off again, Mole said in a low voice, Ratty, my friend, I'm very sorry indeed for my foolish conduct. My heart quite fails me when I think how I might have lost that beautiful lunch basket. Will you forgive me? That's all right, bless you, responded the rat cheerfully. What's a little wet to a water rat? Don't you think any more about it. And look here, I really think you had better come and stop with me for a time. I'll teach you to row and to swim, and you'll soon be as handy on the water as any of us. The mole was so touched he could find no voice to answer him, and he had to brush away a tear or two with the back of his paw. When they got home, the rat made a bright fire in the parlour and planted the Mole in an armchair in front of it. Then he fetched down a dressing gown and slippers for him and told him river stories till supper time. Supper was a most cheerful meal, but shortly afterwards a terribly sleepy Mole had to be escorted upstairs by his considerate host to the best bedroom, where he soon laid his head on his pillow in great peace and contentment. This day was only the first of many similar ones for the Mole, each of them longer and fuller of interest as the ripening summer moved onward. He learned to swim and to row, and entered into the joys of running water.